Hello. I never imagined I'd be here, sharing this, but it's all come crashing down. My fiancée Jessica, the woman I had been with for 8 years, had suddenly started refusing to sleep with me. She claimed it was because she wanted to save herself for marriage. After 8 years of intimacy and shared experiences, this sudden shift made absolutely no sense. We were already living together, planning our wedding for next spring, and had never been particularly religious. So why now? Why this drastic change? Night after night, I found myself being turned down, and with each rejection, she became more distant, more irritable. The first warning sign, the first red flag, should have been her newfound obsession with her phone. Jessica used to leave it lying around, but now, she took it everywhere. She even brought it into the bathroom with her, which was something she'd never done before. And whenever I entered a room, she would quickly flip it face down, like she was hiding something. It was subtle, but there was a definite shift. She'd started working late at her marketing firm more often, sometimes not coming home until 9 or 10 p.m., claiming it was due to big projects or client meetings. I trusted her completely, so I never thought to question it. Looking back, I realize now just how naive I was. I should have seen the signs. It all came crashing down last Wednesday. Jessica had left her laptop open while she took a shower, and a message notification popped up from someone named Mike, a guy from work. My heart literally stopped as I read the message. "Last night was amazing, baby. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Don't forget to delete these messages like usual." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, my hands trembling as I opened their chat history. Jessica hadn't deleted their previous conversations, and what I found made me physically sick. They had been having an affair for the past 3 months. The messages were explicit, detailing their encounters, hookups in his car, at his apartment, and even in the conference room after hours. Meanwhile, she had been telling me she was too tired, too stressed, or that she wanted to wait until marriage. But it didn't stop there. As I scrolled further through their messages, I discovered something even worse. She had been mocking me to him. She complained about how I was too nice and boring in bed. She laughed about how I believed her excuses about working late, as if I were the fool. There were even messages about how she planned to keep me on the hook, all while she figured out where things would go with Mike. She was using me because I was financially stable, while Mike was still figuring things out. The betrayal cut deep, but what really broke me was realizing how she had turned our intimacy into a weapon. She wasn't just cheating. She was actively manipulating me with sex, using it as a tool to keep me around while she freely gave herself to someone else. 8 years of trust, love, and shared memories reduced to nothing more than a cruel game. I sat there, staring at the screen, as years of memories suddenly took on a different light. All those girls' nights out, the late nights when she came home smelling of someone else's perfume, the mysterious text messages that she would quickly delete, and the business trips that came up out of nowhere. How many other Mikes had there been? I heard the shower turn off and knew I had only minutes to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, to scream and demand answers, to tear the facade down and make her feel the same pain I was feeling. But another, colder, more calculated part of me took over. If I was going to handle this, I needed to be smart. I quickly took photos of the messages with my phone, logged out of her laptop, and put it back exactly as I'd found it. That night, I pretended everything was normal. I kissed her goodnight, told her I loved her, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth, as she peacefully slept beside me. I lay awake, my mind racing with plans. She thought she was the one playing games? Fine. She was about to learn that two could play at that game. And I wasn't playing for fun. I was playing for keeps. The next few days would be a masterclass in self-control. I watched Jessica go through her usual routine every day, as if nothing had changed. She would get dressed up for work, take private phone calls on the balcony, and maintain her convenient headache whenever I tried to initiate any kind of physical contact. It was like the mask she had worn for years had become more convincing. But now, I saw everything through a completely different lens. Every kiss goodbye felt like a mockery. Every "I love you" was a calculated lie, something rehearsed and empty. She had turned our life together into a performance, and I was the only one who hadn't realized it until now. I started documenting everything, paying attention to the smallest details that I had once overlooked. The time she left, the time she returned, even screenshots of our joint bank account showing suspicious purchases at restaurants I had never been to, places she had claimed she was going for, work dinners. It felt like a slow burn, but each piece of evidence was a small victory in the fight I had to face. I even went as far as buying a small, voice-activated recorder and left it in her car, tucked under the seat where she would never find it. Was it crossing a line? Maybe. But she had obliterated all the lines the moment she turned our relationship into a joke for her and Mike's amusement. The recordings I collected were illuminating, to say the least. Not only was she meeting Mike during her lunch breaks, but she was also coordinating with her best friend, Sarah, to cover for her. "Just tell him we're having girls' night again," she would say, laughing. "He never questions it when you're involved." Sarah, who had been a bridesmaid at my sister's wedding, who had spent countless holidays at my family's house, was helping Jessica orchestrate the entire affair. The betrayal cut even deeper knowing that someone I considered a friend was actively participating in the deception. But the real kicker came when I overheard Jessica talking to Mike about our upcoming wedding. "Don't worry, baby," she said. "I'm not actually going to marry him. I just need to keep him thinking everything's fine until you get that promotion. Once you're settled in your new position, I'll break it off." They even joked about how Jessica would blame me for the breakup, painting herself as the victim of my emotional unavailability, as if the years we spent together meant nothing more than a means to an end. The more I uncovered, the more my anger crystallized. It wasn't just that she was cheating. It was the level of deception, the lengths she went to manipulate me. Jessica had spent years carefully crafting an image of herself as the perfect, devoted girlfriend. Everyone in our social circle adored her. She was the first to organize birthday parties, the one who helped friends move, the one who brought soup when someone was sick. The thought of her continuing to play the saint while betraying me was unbearable. I needed more than just evidence of the affair. I needed to understand the full scope of her deception, to fully grasp how deep this betrayal went. So, I hired a private investigator named Tom, someone who specialized in infidelity cases. When I met him, he looked at me with a knowing expression. "Man, I've seen some cold-hearted stuff," he said after our initial meeting. "But using a wedding as cover while you wait for your side piece to get promoted? That's a new one." Tom worked fast. Within a week, he had gathered photos of Jessica and Mike together, documented their regular meetings at a small apartment downtown, all paid for in cash, of course. But there was more. Mike wasn't the only one. Over the past year, Jessica had been seeing at least 2 other men, both conveniently written off as work contacts whenever their names came up. The final straw came when Tom uncovered that she had been siphoning money from our joint savings account into a private one. Small amounts at first, $100 here, $200 there. But over the course of a year, she had managed to redirect nearly $115,000 of our wedding fund into her own account. When I confronted the bank, they showed me the transfer forms, all of them authorized with my forged signature. The realization hit me like a freight train, and with every new revelation, it felt like another twist of the knife. But I forced myself to stay focused. Jessica thought she was orchestrating some brilliant exit strategy, but she had no idea what was coming. I spent my nights planning while she slept soundly beside me, likely dreaming of her future with Mike. The irony of her saving herself for marriage excuse became more bitter with each passing day as I realized how long I had been living a lie. She had used our entire relationship as a stepping stone for her own selfish agenda, and now it was time for the truth to come to light. I gathered my evidence and set my plan in motion, thinking back on all the times Jessica had made me feel guilty for questioning her late nights or expressing any insecurity about our relationship. "Don't you trust me?" she'd ask, her eyes wide with practiced innocence, as though I were the one in the wrong. After everything we'd been through together, the performance she put on deserved an Oscar. But the show was about to end, and the final act would be one she never saw coming. 2 weeks into my investigation, Jessica's behavior took an unexpected turn. She started becoming more affectionate, sending me random, "I love you" texts throughout the day, and suggesting that we start planning more details for the wedding. At first, I thought it was some form of guilt tripping, but soon I realized why she had suddenly turned on the charm. Mike had failed to get his promotion, and their carefully laid out timeline was starting to fall apart. I found this out through their phone conversations, which I had caught on the recorder hidden in her car. "What do you mean they chose someone else?" she hissed during one call. "This wasn't the plan, Mike. I can't keep this charade up much longer. Do you know how hard it is to keep making excuses about why I won't sleep with him?" The desperation in her voice would have been almost comical if it hadn't made me sick to my stomach. Their solution? Jessica decided to reconnect with me, pretending that everything was fine while Mike worked on finding a new job. That evening, she came home with my favorite takeout, wearing the lingerie I had bought her for Valentine's Day. She was all apologies, claiming that her recent stress and emotional distance were due to a breakthrough in therapy. When she started kissing my neck, I had to fight back the urge to recoil. "I've been thinking," she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Maybe we don't need to wait until the wedding after all." The same lips that had been all over Mike just hours earlier were now trying to seduce me as part of their backup plan. I made an excuse about an early meeting and spent the next hour in the shower, scrubbing my skin raw, feeling filthy and used. The next day, Tom, the private investigator, delivered another bombshell. He'd managed to get access to Jessica's private email account, the one she didn't think I knew about. There were messages going back years, detailing a pattern of relationships with married men, careful manipulations, and calculated exits. She had it down to a science. Find a successful man, build a life with him, line up a better option, then orchestrate a breakup that left her looking like the wounded party. But the most gut-wrenching discovery came when Tom uncovered an email thread between Jessica and Sarah from 6 months ago, where they discussed how to handle me. "James is different from the others," Jessica wrote. "He's got real potential for long-term stability, and his family has serious money. We need to be smart about this. I can't just ghost him like the others." The two of them went on to discuss various strategies, including the possibility of a quick marriage and an even quicker divorce if things with Mike didn't work out. Reading about their methodical approach to my life, how they discussed me like I was some kind of investment to be maximized, made something snap inside me. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. It was about 8 years of calculated deception. It was about someone systematically dismantling my trust while plotting to exploit me both financially and emotionally. That night, I stayed in our guest room, claiming I had a migraine. I could hear Jessica's fake, concerned questions from the other side of the door. "Do you need anything? Are you sure you're okay?" As I lay there, stewing in the rage and disbelief, I finalized my plan. The pieces were all in place. The evidence gathered, the necessary calls made, the arrangements set up. All that remained was the timing. The next morning, Jessica announced that she had planned a special dinner for us that weekend, just the two of us. She smiled and touched my arm with practiced tenderness. "We need to reconnect, baby. I miss us." I agreed enthusiastically, watching her face light up, believing she had won. She had no idea that she had just handed me the perfect opportunity to execute my plan. As Jessica left for work that morning, I caught a glimpse of her texting Mike. "It's working. Give me 2 more weeks to get everything back on track." I allowed myself a small smile. 2 weeks? She wouldn't need nearly that long. The countdown to Saturday's dinner had officially begun, and with it, the end of Jessica's carefully constructed house of cards. The days leading up to the dinner were like a strange, twisted dance of deception. Jessica doubled down on her efforts to fix our relationship, even suggesting that we start looking at wedding venues again. Each morning, I'd find little love notes scattered around the apartment, saccharine messages about our future together that made my skin crawl. The same woman who had spent months mocking me to her lover was now playing the role of the devoted fiancé with an Oscar-worthy commitment. I played along, matching her performance with one of my own. On Thursday, over breakfast, I casually suggested, "Maybe we should invite Mike from your office to the wedding. You work so closely with him." The flash of panic in her eyes was brief but unmistakable. She quickly masked it with a practiced smile. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary," she replied, suddenly very interested in her coffee. "He's not really the wedding type. And besides, we're trying to keep the numbers down, remember?" It was the same excuse she had used when I suggested inviting my college friends. An excuse for a wedding she had no intention of ever allowing to happen. The night before our special dinner, Jessica came home later than usual. The recorder in her car captured her final meeting with Mike. "Just stick to the plan," she told him, her voice laced with control. "James is completely clueless. He's actually being sweeter than ever. Once things settle down with your new job prospect, we can figure out our next move." Mike's response was less confident. "I don't know, Jess. Something feels off. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" If they only knew how wrong they were. While they were having their little strategy session, Tom was helping me execute the first phase of my plan. We had already sent copies of all the evidence, photos, bank statements, recorded conversations, email threads, to key people. Our families, closest friends, her boss, and, most importantly, Mike's wife, Emily. Yes, wife. Turns out our friend Mike had conveniently forgotten to mention that he had been married for 5 years with 2 young kids when he started sleeping with my fiancée. The email was set to hit everyone's inboxes at exactly 7:30 p.m. tomorrow, right in the middle of our romantic dinner. But that was just the beginning. The real surprise was what I had discovered about Jessica's creative accounting at work. Those long hours at the office weren't just for meeting Mike. She had been manipulating client accounts, skimming small amounts, and covering her tracks with forged documentation. The same technique she had used on our joint account, but on a much larger scale. Saturday morning arrived, and Jessica was in full romance mode. She spent hours preparing what she promised would be a memorable evening, humming to herself as she cooked. I watched her move around the kitchen, noting how easily she'd slipped into the role of the loving partner. I wondered how many other men had seen this same performance, how many had been fooled by her charms. "I made reservations at La Maison," she announced proudly. "Remember our first date there?" Of course, I remembered. It was the same restaurant where I now knew she had met 2 of her previous marks. The symmetry of it all was almost poetic. She had chosen the site of her past conquests for what she thought would be another triumph. Instead, it would be the stage for her undoing. As evening approached, I got dressed in the suit she had bought me for my last birthday. "You look handsome," she said, straightening my tie with practiced intimacy. Her hands lingered on my chest, and I fought back a wave of revulsion. A few more hours, I reminded myself. Just a few more hours, and the mask she'd worn for 8 years would finally crack. La Maison was exactly as I remembered it. Intimate lighting, soft jazz, overpriced wine. Jessica ordered champagne, her eyes gleaming with what I now recognized as calculated charm. "To us," she toasted, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." I clinked my glass with hers, watching the time on my watch. 7:15 p.m. The irony of her chosen phrase wasn't lost on me. New beginnings, indeed, but just not the kind she was planning. As we worked through our appetizers, she launched into an obviously rehearsed speech about how much our relationship meant to her, how she had had time to reflect on her recent behavior, and how she was now ready to fully commit to our future together. The words flowed effortlessly from her mouth, each one carefully chosen to make me feel like everything was going to be okay. But I knew the truth. The truth was that this was the final act, and it would be the last performance she would ever put on. "I know I've been distant lately," she said, reaching for my hand across the table, "but I want you to know that's all going to change. Starting tonight." The same line she probably used on countless others, delivered with practiced sincerity. But this time, I wasn't buying it. I checked my watch again. 7:25 p.m. Right on cue. Her phone buzzed, then mine, then her phone again. The synchronized symphony of notifications I'd been waiting for. I watched as her expression shifted. First, there was mild annoyance. Then, confusion. And finally, dawning horror as she read the messages flooding her screen. What is this?" Her voice trembled as she scrolled through her phone. "James, I'm getting weird messages from everyone. My mom, your sister, Sarah. Why are they all sending me these screenshots?" The color drained from her face as the realization set in. "How did you? Oh, you mean the evidence of your affair with Mike?" I kept my voice calm, taking a sip of wine. "Or are you more concerned about the photos, the bank statements, the recordings? You'll have to be more specific. There's quite a lot to go through." She started to stand, but I wasn't finished. "You might want to stay seated, Jessica. See, right about now, Mike is having a very interesting conversation with Emily." You remember Emily, right? His wife, the mother of his children, the woman you knew about but conveniently never mentioned to anyone? James, I can explain. Her mask was cracking now, the practiced innocence giving way to panic. Explain what? How you've been sleeping with a married man while playing the waiting until marriage card with me. How you and Sarah plan to exploit my family's money. Or maybe you'd like to explain the creative accounting at work, because I'm sure the SEC will be very interested in your explanation for that. The mention of her financial schemes hit home. Her face went from pale to ashen. You wouldn't. I already have, I said calmly. Check your work email. The audit team received an anonymous tip about an hour ago, with quite a detailed paper trail. You're good with numbers, Jessica, but not quite good enough. Oh? And I took the liberty of copying the firm's managing partner on that email about your affair with Mike. Sexual relationships between managers and their direct reports are against company policy, aren't they? She was hyperventilating now, mascara starting to run as she frantically scrolled through her messages. My reputation, my career. You've ruined everything. No, Jessica, you did that all on your own. I just made sure everyone else could see behind the mask. I stood up and placed several $100 bills on the table. Dinner's on me. Consider it a parting gift. You're going to need the money for a good lawyer. As I walked out of La Maison, I could hear her starting to sob, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The maitre d' gave me a knowing look. He'd probably seen similar scenes play out before, though perhaps not quite so dramatically. Outside, the night air felt clean and crisp. My phone was still buzzing with reactions to the evidence I'd sent, but they could wait. I had one more stop to make. Emily had agreed to meet me for coffee. We had a lot to discuss about the people we thought we knew and the lies we'd both been living with. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Jessica in my rearview mirror, rushing out of the restaurant, mascara streaked down her face, frantically trying to call someone. Mike, probably, though he was likely a bit preoccupied with his own imploding marriage. The sight didn't bring me joy exactly, but there was a certain satisfaction in watching karma finally catch up with her. 8 years of manipulation and lies had come to an end in a single evening. It wasn't the closure I had imagined when I first bought that engagement ring, but it was the closure I needed. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's making sure that truth follows them everywhere they go. What do you think? Was this the ultimate justice for a marriage built on lies? Can someone truly get over years of betrayal? Or does the truth destroy everything? How far is too far when it comes to revenge? And in the end, who really wins when trust is shattered beyond repair?